Hello. Guys, I wanted to take a few minutes here and just go through some of the functions with the replays. This will help benefit you if you're using the replays as a debriefing tool or for your content creation, or maybe a little bit of both. So everybody knows every time that you log out of the game, this is reset to disabled. So you're going to have to go in every single time and you're going to need to re-enable this for your session. So let's take another look in the replays. This is another major problem that I've found, at least for me, and I'm one brain cell from being a plant most of the time anyway, but you guys may not have this problem. I did. I see a line like this, um, and it looks like the data is corrupted. There's nothing available. It's saying it's 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Like, okay, there's nothing here. There's something there. If you open the replay folder, you'll be able to see these files and they'll have a little bit of extra information in them. It won't have the length, but you'll see the size of the file. You'll see whatever the grade was, if there was one, when you had done it, what the actual map was, and of course your information here in terms of time and date that the mission took place in the file name. Um, go into the folder, rename the file to something that you recognize. See, I've renamed a whole bunch of these for some of my content. These help me go right to the place that I'm looking for, because obviously if you replay a mission a bunch of different times and then you have to go back and try to find that significant thing again, it can be kind of tedious. So do yourself a favor, go in, rename the files, moving on. So what we're going to end up doing here, I'm going to choose one of these two. And part of the reason why is there's slightly limited functionality when you choose these. Now, the difference between these is that typically, in my experience, what I've noticed is that if I host a game, because I only play multiplayer, single player, don't even get me started. But if I host the game, then the data comes up complete. If somebody else is hosted, then I find that I get a line like this. And these are the ones that are a little bit more important to go in and rename. That said, all of them could be renamed. But let's go into one of these ones. It's going to tell me that I have nothing. No big deal. One thing I will say, if you go in and rename a thing in the replay folder, you're going to come back in here and it's not going to be different. Then just hit refresh and it has worked every time. I've really enjoyed it. So let's keep moving. So here are, guys. Let's review some of the tools. Now you'll notice with the mouse, when I have the mouse showing, the UI is visible. Um, the mouse helps move, like you can left click and hold and move, but you don't get a lot of response from it. This is very easy. It says toggle replay UI, and you can see that's a little H. Not everybody knows it's an H, but ultimately when I hit H, now all of a sudden I'm not bound, or the mouse isn't bound to the perimeter of my screen. Now I can move this around freely, and what they call free cam mode. Now there are a couple extra buttons here. If I'm being totally honest, I haven't played around with them that much, but with the camera, there's a couple of settings here that you can adjust in terms of roll and the look sensitivity. There's a few filters that you can adjust. To be honest, I use a lot of Ansel, and I'll go back in Premiere Pro to do a lot of the color correction, stuff like that. So I don't use this stuff that often. Aperture and focal distance is great for depth of field, but with that said, again, I use other tools for that, so I don't use this. And the splines is basically, or these points, sorry. If I'm being honest, I don't use this at all, but ultimately I think the way that it's supposed to work is you can set a series of waypoints for your camera to follow, or your cinematics or whatever. Honestly, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but if you do, please feel free to leave a comment in the description and tell us how you're using it. Another button here we're seeing is free cam and orbit. Now that the orbit is going to give you the ability to kind of free move around your chosen character. Now this is where some of the limitations of being in that not corrupted file, but in that non-hosted file, let's call it, is you're not going to have the ability to switch between all your dudes. Like right now, I'm kind of stuck on. Typically, you could use your Q and buttons to shift back and forth, which is essentially like clicking these. Right now, it's New Hammer or Hammer is the only character that's registering. I think he's typically hosting, so this is the host of this session. I can't orbit around him. I don't have that functionality, whereas you likely will if you've hosted the game or you're in single player. And single player, I don't think you have any of these problems. So that's free cam, or you could use orbit to just be able to orbit around and move around as opposed to free cam. I think you get it. Um, the fast forward in terms of it's going to jump ahead a certain amount. I'm not exactly sure how far, and what you're going to notice here too is you get a lot of artifact as you fast forward until you hit play and the game renders what it is that's happening at that moment. You're going to get a lot of digital artifact like what you can see right now. Guys heads aren't synced up with their gear, all this other stuff, and it may get frustrated. Don't worry about it, guys. Just hit play and everything will get reset to that moment in time. Game needs to be able to do what the game wants to do. And unfortunately, pausing still creates some of this artifact, and it's just something that you have to deal with. Back to the UI, and again, I'm turning that on and off with the H key or hotel key. The last thing that we haven't really talked about is this here. It's essentially represents speed. So a lot of the videos that I do are shot in mostly for dramatic effect in the cinematics that I do is in 0.3. You can do whatever speed you want, but ultimately what this allows you to do is slow everything down to 0.3. And that's great to slow things down. But now I'm zooming around here and it's really tough to kind of get the effect I want when the mouse is, you're just using your AWSD and it's just moving around so fast. Well, typically when I'm moving around, I'll hit H and turn the UI off so that I have full range of motion with the mouse. But right now, as I'm moving so quickly, as I use my mouse wheel to scroll back, now all of a sudden you'll notice that my speed is changing. So right now I can get this is about as slow as I can go, and this is great. So what this allows me to do is, especially for the cinematics, I can slow things down and track somebody to see if I can get the effect that I'm looking for. And I can pause things because if I pause, there's no problem with the artifact. The game knows where everything is right at that moment in time. And now with the pause, I can start looking around for those cool angles. And what I would recommend, guys, I'm no master, but let's just say one of the things that I like to do if I'm doing a cinematic is to try to focus on views that aren't ordinary in game. You'll notice there's a little bit of artifacting here with this guy, and if I wanted to clean that up a little bit, I might slow that down to 0.05 and just let the game get caught up, and it will go ahead and re-render almost in the same spot that I was before. But go and find those unique views, guys, and pan around while it's paused, slow everything down, and you're going to find some really cool effects, some things that you hadn't known about before. All right. So a couple other things. You'll notice that I just paused and I was looking in a different direction. So these guys are accurate. These guys are still a little bit messed up. Go ahead and slow this down a little bit. Hit play, let them render properly so I get the sequence or the scene that I'm looking for. One of the other things I didn't mention before is that if you're wanting to move up and down, it's just the control and the space key. So control moves you down, up moves you, or spacebar moves you up. And again, this is going to be impacted by the scroll wheel. So if you wanted to slow things down a little bit, let's use your scroll wheel to adjust for whatever effect you're looking for. Now you'll notice I'm about to throw a frag in here, and this is difficult to actually capture the timing. Now, when these devices are thrown into the room and bouncing around right before they detonate, it's a really cool effect to be able to capture. It's just it's very frustrating to try and figure out the timing on it. But essentially, you need to set you need to figure out a way. My guy just pulled the pin on this flashbang or on a stinger. I need to try and get the timeline to a point after the pin is pulled and before the detonation happens. So right now, to try to get it back to that point would be difficult. It's a little easier to kind of let my dude throw the thing, kind of keep my eye on the timeline, wait for it to bang. So I hear it bang, and I can actually go over here and see where it happened, but there's no device here anywhere. What you end up needing to do, and this may or may not work, I'm only going to give it a couple of tries, is rewind to a point where, okay, so that time we actually saw the device. So what I needed to do was rewind the timeline to a point after the pin is pulled, but before detonation. And clearly I found it. Now this time was different. I need to go back a little bit further. And there's the device, but let's see if I can back a smidge more. I'm looking at the timeline there. I've gone back about a second, which may be enough, may not be enough. There. So as you can see from that, as I go back a little bit further than that, 1 extra second, now I can actually see the device. I had intentionally bounced it off the wall, or correction, off the door, uh, to give us some cover to the right as we entered. And it looks like I'm successful. There's the device. This is a cool thing to be able to capture. Boop. And if you can do it, not everybody can. So that's a unique. If you want to add, again, there's some artifact. If you want to add something a little bit cool to your replays or to your cinematics, then that's the trick: is get that timeline to a point after the pin is pulled on your device before it detonates, and you will be able to capture it. If you've let it, if it has gone off and you know that it's gone off, and you didn't capture it, you'll be able to see the scorch mark on the floor. That's a useful tool to be able to identify where the thing's going to go off. And from there, you can kind of figure out how many seconds back from your timeline you need to be. It'll be within about 5 seconds or so. This is a very short timeline, so it's a little easier to find that. But if you have a 20-minute mission file and you've got to go back 5 seconds, guys, it is a bit tedious, but the payoff is kind of cool if that's what you're looking for. So one of the things that you're going to find, guys, here's another one. So this dude just got shot, um, ate some rounds as well. I mean, it was a little bit of back and forth, some ping pong, if you will. One of the things that you'll see is if I go back, say I'm looking another way, a little bit of a mess there. If I go back to a point after the guy gets shot, okay, this is exactly what I was looking for. So this is another one of these artifacts where the game doesn't know what has happened to this guy. This is unfortunately just the way that the replays are set up now. It's a glitch. I'm sure they'll fix it at some point, but ultimately what you need to wait for in order for this to go away is you either need to see him, you need to go back to a point where he was alive and is actually getting shot and is disabled or killed, and then he will actually look dead just as he did before. Additionally, once your guys have gone over and actually detained him or handcuffed him for security reasons or for whatever, once they've interacted with him or her, he will look like he is supposed to. He'll be detained. He'll be handcuffed, and for the rest of the project, he'll be fine until you go back to this point in time again on the timeline. A little confusing, but ultimately, if you've seen the character get shot in your replay, you will see him appropriately on the ground in the condition that you've left him in. If it's like this, once the guys go and arrest him, it will put him back to the way that he's supposed to be on the ground, detained. And that really, guys, is a big part of it. That's probably most of what you need to know without me kind of going around the horn over and over again, or ringing around the rosy, as I like to say. There are a lot of glitches and stuff with the replays, but quite frankly, with a little bit of patience, a little bit of messing around with some of the controls, looking at the different views that are available, using it as a debriefing tool, using it for unique cinematics. If you understand a little bit of what you're up against, you can get around just about every little artifact, every glitch. Hopefully, if more people start using the tool, the devs will put a little bit more weight into cleaning it up a little bit, because it does provide a fantastic resource for debriefing and cinematics. Guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Drop me a line. Let me know what your experience has been. Tell me how you've been using it and to what effect. Maybe there's a tip or a trick that you have up your sleeve that I didn't touch on. Please just share it in the comments. Look forward to seeing your stuff, guys. See you on the other side.